I'm here tonight not so much to give you raw chuck as to give you red meat. See, I'm the speaker who comes on before the political candidate to get the crowd fired up. That's you, fired up. Hand clapping, on your feet, foaming at the mouth.
Give me a couple seconds, I'll get the foaming going.
So don't hold back. Where the Spirit leads you tonight, go. Do I hear an amen? Amen. Oh, that's good. I can't hear you, though. I thought we were all Chuck fans here. Either I'm partly deaf, or this audience is a bunch of limp-lunged wussies. What? Yeah. That's better. So who's reading tonight? Chuck! I can't hear you. Chuck! Yeah. So who's the author of this new book? Ignore that man behind the curtain. I'm sorry. A carefully rehearsed show here. So, who's the author of this new book, Snuff? This audacious, bodacious, salacious novel about an old porn queen and her 600 on-camera boyfriends. Who? Chuck! Who's written 10 other books that disturb, perturb, masturb, suburb, and just flat out herb millions and millions of readers? Who? Who's the author of Fight Club, made into that Brad Pitiful movie, and Choke, soon to be a major motion picture? Who grew up in the Pacific Northwest and still lives in the Pacific Northwest? Who's got the shootingest rifle, the prettiest gal, the fightingest dog, and the fastest horse in these parts? No, that's Davy Crockett. But who grew up in a mobile home and studied to be a journalist at the University of Oregon and interned for NPR in Eugene and volunteered at a homeless shelter and worked for Freightliner trucks as a diesel mechanic, busting his knuckles with a wrench and using 60-weight oil as an antiseptic? Who? And who drove a Mercury Bobcat for years? Yeah. Or maybe everybody here did. And who in his mid-30s met the writer Tom Spanbauer at a writer's workshop, started spinning minimalist stories, and found his shocking and satirical voice in this world, and then had his first true quality novel, Invisible Monsters, rejected by publishers for being too disturbing? Who? Chuck, that's right. And then Chuck went right on being too disturbing through book after book about sex addicts and demon-possessed diarists and mad hijackers and young people with rabies and other such dysfunctional denizens of planet Palahniuk. Now, just one more question. Who should publish every new novel with its own warning label that says, "Have you got what it takes to take what I got"? Who? Ladies and gentlemen, Crips and Bloods, devils and angels, gangbangers and headbangers and folks who just like bangers and mash, I give you a man who is rapidly becoming an American institution and may rapidly be on his way into one. A cross-pollinization of sin and sense, of dare and dire, of humor and hammer, of sharp writing and sharp weapons, of over-the-top and under-the-belt. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Chuck Palahniuk.
You all are Baptists, aren't you?
Methodist.
Every Sunday, I like to go, I call it visiting. And I swear that on Sundays I'm not going to drive my car. There's going to be one day a week when I don't drive my car. And so I take my dogs and I try to walk and visit everybody I can walk to in a day. And I always go to Tammy and Matthew's because they'll let me bring the dogs inside. And Tammy and Matthew are from Lexington, actually. And they live in Portland. And they've been married 14 years. And for 14 years, they've had this enormous old cat named Petey, this big black and white cat. And Petey is so big that when he lays down, he looks like a throw rug. He's just this pool of black and white cat. And Petey is really old and has diabetes, and every day they have to give Petey a shot of insulin. And that means they can't travel. They can't take any vacations because nobody is going to give Petey that damn shot. And nobody's going to love Petey like they love Petey. And Petey is just getting stinkier and stinkier. And this spring I went on Sunday and I visited. And Tammy and Matthew said, we're going to have to put Petey down. We love Petey, but we're trapped. And Petey's quality of life is, not what it used to be. We're going to have to put Petey to sleep, and we're not happy about it. And the next week I went to visit, and there was Petey. Petey's still stinking up their house. And I said, I thought you guys were going to put Petey down. And Matthew goes, since Petey got sick, he has to eat this incredibly expensive science diet. And we got half a 50-pound bag of that damn expensive food. And I'm not going to be stuck with half a bag of this cat food. So I figure when Petey finishes his food, then he'll die. It kind of makes sense. And the next week I went and visited, and Petey's still there. And the next week I went and visited, Petey is still there. And when Matthew went into the kitchen, actually when Tammy went into the kitchen to get us coffee, I go, so, Matthew, what's up? And Matthew goes, well, don't tell Tams, but I got an extra bag of cat food. And I'm keeping it in the garage, so whenever we get down to the last scoop in the kitchen bag, I put some more food in. Because I know it's just going to kill Tams to kill Petey. And the next week I go there, and Petey's still there. And I know now, I know the secret, so I can sort of torture Matthew. And when Matthew goes into the kitchen, I go, so Tammy, we're sitting on the sofa, and I lean over. I said, so you still got Petey? There must have been a lot of food in that bag. And Tammy goes, don't tell Matthew. But I've got a bag of cat food, and I've been adding a little bit every day because I know it's just going to kill Matthew to kill Petey. And I love that story because the bag is actually filling up now. And Petey is still alive. So, that's really where all of my stories come from. And the world is full of really sweet, funny stories like that. The world is full of really sweet, really romantic, really important, really profound stories. The world is full of really great stories, but tonight will not be. And I have gotten in big, big trouble over the last couple of years with what I've read in public. And I thought, it would be really, I should grow up. I should grow up and I should start to censor myself. I should start to write things. And then I thought, maybe you people should just take responsibility. Maybe this is one of those cases of enabling. And so maybe you all should just wear some earplugs if you feel yourself getting offended. So, earplugs. They're the secret to happiness. How many folks here have never been to a book event, have never been to hear the boring ordeal of an author presenting their stuff? That's a lot of people. Okay. How tonight is going to go is everything up to this point has just been to test the microphone. You always need a cute, engaging story on the front so that you know how well the microphone works. But the Petey story is a true story. And beyond that, we are going to play some games. I'm going to read some stuff. I'm going to read a story that was just written for tour. It's not published. It probably won't be published, so it's something you're only going to hear here. Because you made the effort to show up tonight. You're going to get something exclusive. Play some games, read a story, answer some questions. And to start out the sort of games is when I write stories, I always try to have an object. Like Petey's bag of food, that's an object. And it's an object that morphs. It has a different meaning over the course of the story. Every time we come back to that object, it's slightly different in your mind. And sometimes those objects are even more important than the characters. In this case, the bag of food functions as an hourglass, counting down the days of Petey's life. And so, try to think about objects in stories. And one of my favorite stories is Rosemary's Baby. And what is the key object in Rosemary's Baby? The necklace. Now, she got that because I coached her. But since she did get it, she will get a copy of a collection of short stories that came out this spring called Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock. And it's one of the best collections of fiction I have seen in years and years. And they're the kind of short stories that got me excited about reading in Tom Spanbauer's workshop. So if you win any of the contests this evening, you get a copy of Knock 'em Stiff, signed by Don, or a copy of Obscene Interiors, an incredibly funny, incredibly dirty little book that I just won't bother to go into. And the contests are going to begin with objects. Again, the objects from the book Snuff. And one important object in Snuff is the cyanide pill that gets kind of passed around. And I really wanted to bring you all cyanide pills. But Random House said that was a slippery slope. So instead, I thought I'd bring you sex dolls. Because I understand that Faulkner did it this way, too. So there's going to be a couple rounds of this. But what we're going to do is throw out about half the sex dolls. Don't start inflating them until you get the signal. But the first boy, fully inflated, it can't be wrinkly like my grandma. It has to be fully inflated with no wrinkles. The first boy and the first girl each get a book. And there'll be a couple rounds of this. And squeeze the little nozzle as you blow into it, or you'll just kill yourself, I swear. So, girl, boy, 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 whoop, girl, boy, girl, girl. Boy. Here's boy. Ah, boy. Oh. Okay. Girl. 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 Okay, let's hold on. Here's a boy. Here's a boy. One last boy. Oh. Aw. So, just to get this over with, on your mark, get set, blow. Blow the doll up. Let's get this done. Come on. Squeeze the little thing. So you're not going to win a book. And it's not about winning. It's about doing a really good job. We almost have a boy. We almost have a boy. Almost. It's still a little wrinkly. Just get it really. This one's wrinkly. This one's better. Almost. Almost. We got a boy. Okay, here you go. We got a boy. We need a girl now. Is that a girl? No, that's a boy. There's a girl almost done back there. No, that's a boy. If I have to tell you, it looks like the girl is winning back there. Yeah, that's, okay, here you go. I'm just going to set it right here. So, if you didn't get a book, at least you got a nice sex doll, which, according to the Atlanta or the Georgia state law on sex toys, is only a novelty. I swear. Is that why there's no holes? I'm not even going to touch that remark. But there is a patch should be taped to the back of the head. So in case there is a hole, you have something to cover it with. It's like a sex doll condom. So what I'd like to do now is read the short story, and then we will keep moving on. So the short story is called Loser, and it's based on a friend of mine who now teaches math at Jesuit High School. So, Loser. The show still looks exactly like when you were sick with a really high fever and you stayed home to watch the TV all day. It's not Let's Make a Deal. It's not Wheel of Fortune. It's not Monty Hall or the show with Pat Sajak. It's that other show where the big loud voice calls your name in the audience, says to come on down, you're the next contestant. And if you guess the cost of rice-a-roni, then you fly round trip to live for a week in Paris. It's that show. The prize is never anything useful, like okay clothes or music or beer. The prize is always some vacuum cleaner or a washing machine, something you might maybe get excited to win if you were like somebody's maid. It's rush week, and the tradition is that everybody pledging Zeta Delt all have to take this big chartered school bus and need to go to some TV studio and watch them tape this game show. Rules say that all the Zeta Delts wear the same red T-shirt with printed on it the Greek Zeta Delta Omega deals, silk screened in black. First, you need to take a little stamp of Hello Kitty, maybe half a stamp, and wait for the flash. It's like this little paper stamp printed with Hello Kitty you suck on and swallow, except it's really blotter acid. All you do is the Zeta Delts sit together to make this red patch in the middle of the studio audience and scream and yell to get on TV. These are not the Gamma Grabathies. They're not the Lambda Rapadates. The Zeta Delts, they are who everybody wants to be. How the acid is going to affect you. If you're going to freak out and kill yourself or eat somebody alive, they don't even tell you. It's traditional. Ever since you were a little kid with a fever, the contestants they call down to play this game show, the big voice always calls for one guy who's a United States Marine wearing some band uniform with brass buttons. There's always somebody's old grandma wearing a sweatshirt. There's an immigrant from some place where you can't understand half of what he says. There's always some rocket scientist with a big belly and his shirt pocket stuck full of pens. It's just how you remember it growing up. Only now. Now all the Zeta Delts start yelling at you, yelling so hard it scrunches their eyes shut. Everybody's just these red shirts and big open mouths. All their hands are pushing you out from your seat, shoving you into the aisle. The big voice is saying your name, telling you to come on down. You're the next contestant. In your mouth, the Hello Kitty tastes like pink bubblegum. It's the Hello Kitty, the popular kind, not the strawberry flavor or the chocolate flavor somebody's brother cooks at night in the General Services building where he works as the janitor. The paper stamp feels caught partway down your throat, except you don't want to gag on TV, not on recorded video with strangers watching you forever. All the studio audience is turned around to see you stumble down the aisle in your red T-shirt. All the TV cameras zoomed in, everybody clapping exactly how you remember it. All those Las Vegas lights flashing, outlining everything on stage. It's something new, but you've watched it done a million zillion times before. And just by automatic, you take the empty desk next to where the United States Marine is standing. The game show host, who's not Alex Trebek, he waves one arm, and a whole part of the stage starts to move. It's not an earthquake, but one whole wall rolls on invisible wheels. All the lights everywhere flashing on and off, only fast, just blink, 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 except faster than a human mouth could ever say. This whole big back wall of the stage slides to one side, and from behind it steps out a giant fashion model, blazing with about 1,000,000 billion sparkles on her tight dress, waving one long, skinny arm to show you a table with 8 chairs like you'd see in somebody's dining room on Thanksgiving, with a big cooked turkey and yams and everything. Her fashion model waist, about as big around as somebody's neck, each of her tits the size of your head. Those flashing Las Vegas kind of lights blinking all around. The big voice saying who made this table, out of what kind of wood, saying the suggested retail price it's worth. To win, the host lifts up this little box. Like a magician, he shows everybody what's underneath. Just this whole thing of bread in its naturally occurring state. The way bread comes before it's made into anything you can eat, like a sandwich or a French toast. Just this bread, the whole way your mom might find it at the farm or wherever bread grows. The table and the chairs, they are totally easy yours, except you have to guess at the price of this big bread. Behind you, all the Zeta Delts crowd really close together in their T-shirts, making what looks like one giant red pucker in the middle of the studio audience. Not even looking at you, all their haircuts are just huddled up, making a big hairy center to the pucker. It's like forever later when your phone rings and a Zeta Delt voice tells you what to bid. That bread just sitting there the whole time, covered in a brown crust. The big voice says it's loaded with 10 essential vitamins and minerals. The game show host, he's looking at you like maybe he's never ever seen a telephone before. He goes, "And what do you bid?" And you go, $8? From the look on the old grandma's face, it's like maybe they should call some paramedics for her heart attack. Dangling out one sweatshirt cuff, this crumpled scrap of Kleenex looks like leaked out stuffing flapping white, like she's some trash teddy bear somebody loved too hard. To cut you off using some brilliant strategy, the United States Marine, the bastard, he says, $9. Then to cut him off, the rocket science guy, he says, $10. This has got to be some trick question. Because the old granny, she says $1.99. And all the music starts loud and the lights flash on and off. The host hauls the granny up onto the stage and she's crying and plays a game where she throws a tennis ball to win a sofa and a pool table. Her grandma face looks just as smashed and wrinkled as that Kleenex she pulls out from her sweatshirt cuff. The big voice calls another granny to take her place, and everything keeps rushing forward. The next round, you need to guess the price of some potatoes, but like a whole big thing of real alive potatoes from before they become food. The way they come from the miners or whoever that dig potatoes in Ireland or Idaho or some other place starting with an I, not even made into potato chips or French fries. If you guess right, you get some big clock inside a wood box like a Dracula coffin standing on one end, except with these church bells inside the box that ding, ding, whatever time it is. Over your phone, your mom calls it a grandfather clock. You show it to her on video, and she says it looks cheap. You on stage with the TV cameras and the lights, all the Zeta Delts call waiting you. You cup your phone to your chest and you go, "My mom wants to know, do you have anything nicer I could maybe win?" You show your mom those potatoes on video, and she asks, did the game show host, did he buy them at the A&P or the Safeway? You speed dial your dad, and he asks about the income tax liability. Probably it's the Hello Kitty, but the face of this big Dracula clock just scowls at you. It's like the secret hidden eyes, the eyelids open up and the teeth start to show, and you can hear about 1,000,000 billion giant alive cockroaches crawling around inside the wood box of it. The skin of all the supermodels go all waxy, smiling big with their faces not looking at anything. You say the price your mom tells you. The United States Marine says $1 more. The rocket science guy says $1 higher than him. Only this round, you win. All those potatoes open their little eyes. Except now you need to guess the price of a whole cow full of milk in a box the way milk comes in the kitchen fridge. You have to guess the cost of a whole thing of breakfast cereal like you'd find in the kitchen cabinet. After that, a giant deal of pure salt the way it comes from the ocean, only in a round box, but more salt than anybody could eat in a whole entire lifetime. Enough salt that you could rim approximately 1,000,000 billion margaritas. All the Zeta Delts start texting you like crazy, your inbox piling up. Next come these eggs like you'd find at Easter, only plain white, and lined up inside some special kind of cardboard case. A whole complete set of 12. These really minimalist eggs. Pure white. So white that you could just look at them forever. Only right away you need to guess at a big bottle like a yellow shampoo, except it's something gross called cooking oil you don't know what for. And the next thing is you need to choose the right price of something frozen. You cup one hand over your eyes to see past the footlights, except all the Zeta Delts are lost in the glare. All you can hear is them screaming different prices of money. $50,000, $1 million, $10,000. Just loony people yelling just numbers. Like the TV studio is just some dark jungle and people are just some monkeys just screeching their monkey sounds. The molars inside your mouth, they're grinding together so hard that you can taste the hot metal of your fillings, that silver melting in your back teeth. Meantime, the sweat stains creep down from your armpit to your elbow, all black-red down both sides of your Zeta Delt t-shirt. The flavor of melted silver and pink bubblegum. It's sleep apnea, only in the day, and you need to remind yourself to take the next breath, take another breath, while the supermodels walk on sparkle high heels and try pimping the audience a microwave oven, pimping a treadmill, while you keep staring to decide if they're really that good looking. They make you spin this doohickey so it rolls around. You have to match a bunch of different pictures so they all go together. Like you're some white rat in Principles of Behavioral Psychology 201. They make you guess what can of baked beans cost more than another. All that fuss just to win something you sit on to mow your lawn. Thanks to your mom telling you prices, you win a thing like you'd put in a room covered in Easy Care, wipe clean, stain-resistant vinyl. You win one of those deals people might write on a vacation for a lifetime of wholesome fun and family excitement. You win something hand-painted with the old world charm inspired by the recent release of a blockbuster epic motion picture. It's the same as when you felt sick with a high fever, and your little kid heart would pound, and you couldn't catch your breath just from the idea that somebody might take home an electric organ. No matter how sick you felt, you would watch this show until your fever broke. All the flashing lights and the patio furniture, it seemed to make you feel better, to heal you, or to cure you in some real way. It's like forever later, but you win all the way to the showcase round. There, it's just you and the old granny wearing the sweatshirt from before. Just somebody's regular grandma, but she's lived through world wars and nuclear bombs. Probably she saw all the Kennedys get shot. And Abraham Lincoln. And now she's bobbing up and down on her tennis shoe toes, clapping her granny hands and crowded by supermodels and flashing lights, while the big voice makes her the promise of a sports utility vehicle, a widescreen television, a floor-length fur coat. And probably it's the acid, but it's like nothing seems to add up. It's like if you live a boring enough life, always knowing the price of rice-a-roni and hot dog wieners, your big reward is you get to live for a week in some hotel in London. You get to ride on some airplane to Rome. Rome, like in Italy. You fill your head full of enough ordinary, boring crap, and your payoff is that a giant supermodel will give you a snowmobile? If this game show wants to see how smart you really are, they need to ask how many calories in a regular onion cheddar cheese bagel. Go ahead, ask you the price of your cell phone minutes any hour of the day. Ask you about the cost of a ticket for going 30 miles over the speed limit. Ask the round-trip fare to Cabo for spring break. Down to the penny, you can tell them the price of decent seats for the Panic at the Disco reunion tour. They should ask you the price of a Long Island iced tea, or the price of Marcia Sanders' abortion. They should ask about your expensive herpes medication that you have to take, but you don't want your folks to know you need. They should ask the price of your History of European Art textbook, which costs $300. Fuck you very much. They should ask what that stamp of Hello Kitty set you back. The sweatshirt granny bids some regular amount of money for her showcase. Just like always, the numbers of her bid appear in tiny lights, glowing on the front of her contestant desk where she stands. Here, all the Zeta Delts are yelling. Your phone keeps ringing and ringing. For your showcase, a supermodel rolls out 500 pounds of raw beefsteak. The steaks fit inside a big barbecue. The barbecue fits aboard a speedboat that fits a massive fifth-wheel pickup truck that fits inside the garage of a brand new house in Atlanta. Atlanta, like in Georgia. Meantime, all the Zeta Delts all stand up. They get to their feet and they step up on their audience seats, cheering and waving. Not chanting your name, but chanting Zeta Delt, chanting Zeta Delt, chanting Zeta Delt. Loud enough so it records for the broadcast. And probably it's the acid. But here you are, battling some old nobody you've never met, fighting over shit you don't even want. Probably it's the acid. But right here and now, fuck declaring a poli-sci major. Fuck General Principles of Accounting 301. Stuck partway down your throat, something makes you gag, and on purpose, by accident, you bid $1 million, trillion, gazillion dollars and 99 cents. And everything shuts down to quiet. Maybe just the little clicking sounds of all those Las Vegas lights blinking on and off, on and off, on and off. It's like forever later when the game show host gets up too close, standing at your elbow, and he hisses, "You can't do that." The host hisses, "You have to play this game to win." Up close, his host's face looks cracked into a million billion jagged fragments, only glued back together with pink makeup, like Humpty Dumpty or a jigsaw puzzle. His wrinkles like the battle scars of playing his same TV game since forever started. All his gray hair is always combed in that same direction. The big voice asks, that big, deep voice booming out of nowhere, the voice of some giant man you can't ever see. He demands, "Could you please repeat your bid?" And maybe you don't know what you want out of your life, at least not yet. But you know it's not a fucking grandfather clock. $1 million, trillion, you say? A number too big to fit on the front of your contestant desk. More zeros than all the bright lights in the game show world. And probably it's the Hello Kitty, but tears slop out both your eyes. And you're crying because for the first time since you were a little kid, you don't know what comes next. Tears wrecking the front of your red t-shirt, turning the red parts black so the Greek omega deals don't make any sense. The voice of one zeta delt alone in that big quiet audience. Somebody yells, "You suck." On the little screen of your phone, a text message says, "Asshole." The text, it's from your mom. The sweatshirt grandma, she's crying because she won. You're sobbing because you don't know why. You're blubbering on recorded video with strangers watching you forever. It turns out the granny wins the snowmobiles and the fur coat. She wins the speedboat and the beefsteaks, the table and chairs and sofa, all the prizes of both showcases because your bid was way, way too high. Nothing in this world is worth all that you think it is. The granny is jumping around, her bright white false teeth throwing smiles in every direction. The game show host gets everybody started clapping their hands, except the Zeta Delts don't. The family of the old granny climbs up on stage, all the kids and grandkids and great-grandkids of her, and they wander over to touch the shiny sports utility vehicle, touch the supermodels. The granny plants red lipstick kisses all over the fractured pink face of the game show host. She's saying, "Thank you," saying, "Thank you," saying, "Thank you," right up to when her granny eyes roll up backward inside her head and her hand grabs at the sweatshirt where it covers her heart. That's loser. So now Charles is going to ask me some questions, and after that, we're going to see the clip from Choke, and then after that, you all are going to ask me some questions, and then I will go back to the living hell that is book signing. Please.
My first question, Chuck, is how much is this book? This is Snuff, your book. And let me ask you about this. This is not The Price is Right, but tell me, how do you research a book about the porn industry? Talk to me about this.
The funnest part is going to be next year when my tax person looks at my Schedule C and says, "You're tax deducting this?" I'm going to be, yeah, it's a valid deduction. It's all research. But really, a lot of it, my first place that stories always come from is people. Because people will tell you fresher stories that have not been processed to be on the internet, and they haven't been processed to be on television. And so people will tell you stories that are so true and so amazing that you couldn't make them up. And then after that, in a way, you just have to do the research to support what's already true. That's the irony, is that people will tell you things that are so incredible that you can't just write them because people won't believe them despite the fact that they're true. In college, and this, I'm going to couch this as a cautionary tale. Don't do this or you might die. You might go to prison. But my best friend and I, best friends, a couple of us, three of us, we used to sell ecstasy in Canada to pay for our college. And one night we had sold all of our ecstasy in nightclubs, and we were laying around some flop hotel room, fried on ecstasy, unable to sleep, playing the "What is the weirdest thing that's ever happened to you" game. And my best friend in college, Franz, who's now a successful architect, who grew up in Butte, Montana, which is about 900 miles from where I grew up. He said, one summer my folks sent me for the summer to live with friends of theirs who had a florist shop. And one summer morning we had to wake up in the middle of the night and load all these flowers in garlands into vans and drive them across the deserts of eastern Washington state. And the sun eventually came up, and we arrived at this isolated railroad siding in the middle of the desert, just nothing but sagebrush and cactus. And eventually an Amtrak train pulled into that siding. And as the sun came up, we had to decorate this whole damn train. We had to hang flowers down the side. We had to put flower arrangements on the top of the train. And all the people on the train were waking up, and they were all really pissed off that their train was going to be delayed for this weird thing in the desert. And then some jackass shows up in a powder blue leisure suit and marries a woman wearing a granny dress. And the jackass's kids, 2 boys and 2 girls, show up in matching outfits. And the wedding party stands on top of the engine with Scottish bagpipe players. And this couple gets married while everyone screams obscenities at them from the train. And then they climbed off the train, and we pulled all the flowers off, and the train went on to Spokane. And Franz is telling me this story, and I'm thinking, oh my God. Because 10, 15 years before I would ever meet Franz at the University of Oregon, that was my father's second wedding. And the 12-year-old kid in the powder blue leisure suit with the puka shell necklace was me. And my mother, my father's first wife, had made us those outfits. And my father worked for the railroad. He really wanted to grind my mother's face in the fact that he was getting married first after the divorce. So he had arranged this huge publicity stunt wedding. And then he realized that he hated this woman. And he later got drunk and he said, you know, I only married her because I knew the railroad would fire my ass if I canceled the wedding. And what are the chances that 15 years later I would become best friends with the florist helper? And so really people tell you these incredible stories, and then you have to do all this research to have the authority to make them believable despite the fact that they're true to start with. So first I go to people, and then after that I'll go to books. And beyond that I might go specifically to interview people. Because I love talking to people about what they know the very best, because they really light up when they're talking about the thing they really know. And a lot of times I will take an anecdote from my life. Can I just run with this just for a little bit longer? When I worked at Freightliner, which was my job after college, this is what happens when you don't pay attention and you just sell drugs for 4 years. You get out of college and you have to take a shitty job at Freightliner. And I worked on the Freightliner assembly line for 13 years. And my very first day of those 13 years, my foreman said, we need you to go up to station like 514 and get back our squeegee sharpener. Because they borrowed it. And they've had it for months, and we need it back, and you don't take no for an answer. You don't take their bullshit. You just say, you know, Bruce says to get the squeegee sharpener and get it back here because we need it now. So I go up there trying to be non-threatening. So I understand you people have our squeegee sharpener? And they just tear me a new asshole. They just scream and yell and curse me out. And they say, you know, we don't got it anymore. It went on to like radiator hanger, to engine buildup. And every workstation, every foreman, every crew sends me to another crew. And every crew just chews me out and sends me to another crew. And by the end of the day, the only thing that I have learned is that there is no such thing as a squeegee sharpener. But I have learned the entire layout of the plant. I now know every workstation where I might be sent to work. And I now have, in a way, introduced myself to every foreman that I might have to work for. And I sort of passed this test that everyone has passed. And when I tell that story, that one sort of dynamic from my life at a party, and another friend of mine who's a pediatrician said, when you're a resident pediatrician at the Oregon Health Sciences University, They wait till you've been on call for 36 hours. They wait for the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, when you haven't eaten anything but vending machine food for 48 hours and you haven't slept. And they wait for you to lie down in your lab coat on a gurney in a hallway, and you fall asleep for 10 minutes, and then they announce, Dr. So-and-so, code red, stat, to room such and such. And they keep announcing your name over and over, code red. And you race through this enormous hospital complex. It's almost never used, this old wing. And as you get off the elevator, you're not thinking about that because you can already hear a woman down the hallway screaming, just screaming. And you just run down that hallway and there's still code red overhead, your name. And your coattails are flapping and you throw that door open. And there's a naked woman lying in bed covered in blood. And the room is draped kind of nightmarishly. All those curtains are pulled and those fabric screens are kind of crowded in. And the lights are really low. There are even lights under the bed. But you don't think about this nightmarish lighting or these odd screens because this naked woman lying in bed covered in blood, something hits you in the chest and you just grab it automatically. And this woman is screaming, you fucker, you bastard, you killed my baby, you son of a bitch, you killed my baby. And this thing that you've caught is a dead baby covered in blood. And you're just shocked. And the reason why the room is so crowded with screens and curtains is because every doctor on staff is hiding in that room. They all want to see what's been done to them, done to you. And the reason, and the woman in bed is either a doctor or a nurse. And the reason why the baby is so real is because it's one of those recessive babies, those CPR babies, that's completely weighted and anatomically like a baby. And the reason why the blood is so sticky and so realistic is because they use real human blood. And I tell that story. And I'll tell the short version. But I told it last year, and I have dozens of these horrific stories. Told it in France, and a man came up and said, I'm a veterinarian. And it's incredibly hard to get into the Academy of Veterinary Sciences in Paris. And I had to apply for 6 or 7 consecutive years. And I was finally admitted. And as tradition, they throw a party for you to congratulate you. And all your peers and your professors, your advisors, you sit in a lab and you get drunk and you drink and you drink and you drink. And if you don't pass out, then more often than not, they put animal tranquilizer in your wine. And when you do pass out, your advisors, your professors, all your fellow students, they take off all your clothes and they bunch you up really tight, like a fetus. And then they very carefully suture you inside the belly of a dead horse. And this man says, he says, when you wake up, he says, you have no idea where you're at. But he says, your head hurts so bad from this chemical they've given you. Your head hurts, you're shaking with cold. You're sticky, it smells bad, you can barely breathe, you can't move, and you can hear them. Because they continue the party around the horse. And as soon as they see you move, as soon as they see the baby move, they start shouting. And they're shouting, they're drunk, they're shouting. You think you can just join this program? You think this is just about passing some tests? Well, it's not. You've got to fight to be in this program. You've got to fight to be one of us. Because it sucks being a veterinarian. And you've got to have more than brains to do this job. You've got to fight to join us. You've got to fight to be in this program. And they scream encouragement as you push and you stretch. And then you finally pop an arm out. And you pop a naked, bloody, cold blue arm out. And they put a glass of wine in your hand. And as soon as you pop your head out, they say, welcome to our program. You're now one of us. So, by presenting one aspect of my life, it allows people to present that identical dynamic or aspect of their life, and you start to sort of connect things thematically. No matter how many puppies and kittens die in a day, it is never going to be as bad as waking up inside a dead horse. And all of your compatriots know that feeling. And so in a way, you all had this horrible shared experience to draw from that bonds you in these future worst moments. So that's another way of doing research, is to present self and allow others to present self, and then just to harvest. So that's another way of doing research, is to present self and allow others to present self, and then just to harvest.
It was a sick puppy who first thought of that, we might say.
It's France. Then they eat the horse.
Oui, oui. Now, tonight we've heard comic stories, and I mean, they have an edge. And in all your work, there's a wickedness, a mischief. But there's also the horror. What scares you? These stories didn't scare you. They're strange, they're attractive and compelling. But are there stories that frighten you?
Why do you think I have to make them funny? No, it's kind of the number one way that we deal with things that we can't really accept, that horrify us as a culture, is to make lesser and lesser copies of them. You know, the Titanic sinks. Boy, couldn't see that coming. Wow. So we got to make a bunch of news stories out of it, and then we've got to make a play out of it, and we've got to make an opera, write some songs, make a bunch of movies about it. We've got to continually fictionalize it and make lesser and lesser copies. Let's make some commemorative plates. Let's make all this crap. And it's a way of breaking this thing down, digesting it into smaller and smaller particles, the way a cow coughs up its cud. And when you see people at Starbucks, and they're telling that story that they've told 1,000,000 times. Yeah, and then my father raped me for the 14th time, and I've never quite gotten over it. And he won't talk about it. He just denies the fact that he raped me. And you can tell that this is a story that's been told 1,000,000 times. But it's, I think, like a cow. You cough up that cud. You make lesser and lesser copies by, replicating that thing. And one of the last stations on that cross is to make it into the premise for a porn movie. And when I was doing research, I found that there are like 7 porn movies, at least 7, that use the sinking of the Titanic as the premise. So the way that we accept things, that we trivialize things, and start to begin to assimilate and accept them, is to either make a joke out of them or to make lesser and lesser copies out of them. And there are things, boy, there was an event, and at the very tail end of the signing, a young man came up to the signing table, and he had a garbage bag full of photos. Well, a garbage bag. And he starts throwing these Polaroid photos out like he's dealing cards. And they all seem to be either these sort of older men sleeping naked in these white plywood boxes just slumped to one side, or they're these sort of haggard-looking younger women sleeping in these white painted plywood boxes slumped to one side. And I go, so dude, what's these sleeping pictures? He goes, they're not sleeping. He says, I work in the fantasy adult unlimited bookstore. And whenever we have a shift change, we have to check the porn arcade to see if anybody has died. And when I find people who have died, either old guys who have died whacking off, or young sex workers who have died with a needle still in their arm, before I call the paramedics, I use this Polaroid that we have for 86ing people, and I take their picture. And so these are all dead people who have died in porn booths. And I swear, I can close my eyes and I will always see those people, those sad, awful, awful pictures. And so how do you be with that? You be with that by somehow making it funny, because otherwise it's just too heartbreaking.
Or even telling it like this. You have made a miniature, you've made your copy now tonight and told it.
And I've chewed my cud, yeah.
So, indeed. Is there anything that you won't write about? Is there anything that is taboo? I mean, we've got sex addicts, and we've got hijackers, and we've got porn queens and kings. You seem to deal in an area where most writers won't go, and with some real third rail topics. Is there anything that you can't or won't go to?
Oh. My friend Janet is a really, take my word for it, she's a nice person. She's a good person. And she and Steve have been married for a long time, and they're great people. But she went through college. She paid her way through college by, she and her boyfriend would dress up as a nice couple. And they would answer ads in the classifieds, and they would adopt household pets that they would sell to product testing laboratories. And they would spend the whole weekend just going from house to house saying, "Oh, we love Fluffy. He'll be so great part of our household. We live on a beautiful farm in the country. You never have to worry about him again." And then Fluffy ends up being vivisected or something. And that was just so heartbreaking and awful that I can't really make that funny. And I tried once, and my editor kicked the story back, and he said, "No, this is never going to be funny." So that's just one place that is really hard to.
I'm going to ask a trivial question, but it it leads to something bigger. Do you ever miss driving that Mercury Bobcat?
Oh, God.
The bigger question here really is, how is Chuck different since Fight Club? Talk about the change in you that becoming a writer has manifested.
It's I've only had 3 cars in my life. I had the Bobcat for 11 years, and then I had an '85 Toyota pickup for 9-10 years, and now I've got a 2000 Toyota 4Runner pickup that I'll probably have for 5 more years. But no, not a lot changes in my life.
You knew who you were going in.
The one thing that really changes is I really, once a month, I hated paying the bills because I had to sit down and I had to see what I was worth. And I had to watch that number go to almost 0 every month. And I just hated that. I hated paying the bill and putting the stamp on the envelope and watching everything I'd worked for go almost to 0 every month. I hated that. And now I don't give a shit. Oh.
Choke is being made into a major motion picture. Can you talk for just a moment about the process of watching books turn into cinema? And there's another question to this. Why let someone else do that to your books? Have you ever thought of just cutting to the chase, plays yourself, and cutting out the middleman, so to speak?
Everything after the book is kind of beside the point, because the book is my way of dealing with something in my life at the time that I cannot change and I cannot accept. So in a way I have to write a story about a worst case scenario, and then I have to take that story to the most extreme point and exhaust my physical reaction to whatever this terrible thing is. At the time, I was writing Lullaby. I had a neighbor who was a great neighbor except for the fact that she would put her stereo speakers outdoors and she would play the most crappy music you could imagine. And anytime the sun came out, she would just blare this. It was Chinese opera. It was bagpipe music. It was just music that I hated. And it just drove me nuts. And I couldn't resolve it, and I couldn't be with it. So I wrote Lullaby about people who are kind of constantly sort of overwhelmed by memes, by sort of messages beyond their control. And I went on tour with Lullaby. And when I came back from tour, she had sworn that she was never going to move away. her house was empty, and there was a for sale sign in the front yard. Just this weird, magical thing. And you find that if you have these things in your life, and you fictionalize them, and you really, really take them to extremes, and you completely exhaust your emotional attachment to them. Like in psychology, they call it flooding. Say you're afraid of snakes, so they put you in a room full of snakes, and you so burn out that you're no longer afraid of snakes. But in a way, you take these personal issues to such an enormous extreme that you're no longer emotionally reactive to them. And at that point, it's amazing. They just vanish. It's really just a fantastic, fun thing to do. And so by the time, Choke is even published as a book, my issue is really resolved. And so the book no longer really serves me. I've digested that cud. And so it's nice to see. I want to be surprised by what somebody else will do with that story. And so for Clark Gregg had it for 8 years, and we talked on the phone, and I told him all the things I wish I had done with the story after my last draft was accepted. But in a way, I'm just not attached to that story anymore. It's already served me. And so for me, it's a dead thing. And I want to be surprised by somebody else changing that story so it serves them. And they did that with Choke. They did a really, really great job with it. For the next doll competition, we've got time for some questions from you all. And if you've got a question, then you get a head start by getting a doll. So, got a question? Here's a girl doll. Oh. So, let's start with you.
I wanted to ask, with Survivor, you had to deal with a lot of controversy because of 9/11. How are you dealing with the next story, preparing with the publicity?
Oh, when you say next story, you mean Snuff or Pygmy? Pygmy. Pygmy is a dark comedy that comes out next year that I just finished about a 13-year-old foreign exchange student from an unnamed sort of totalitarian nation. And he's brought over with a whole bunch of other little 12, 13-year-old exchange students for 6 months. And really, in fact, they're super ninjas, brilliant physicists, trained terrorist killers who are here for 6 months to create science fair projects that will be taken to the finals in Washington, D.C., where they will explode, killing millions. And it's a love story. So you just can't think about it. When you write a story, you cannot think, oh, I can't wait to give a copy of this to my mom. Oh, I really want Grammy to read this sex part. You just cannot think about it. You can't think about anybody reading it outside the room. You maybe think of your editor reading it. Oh, this will make Jerry really laugh. But you just cannot think about how it's going to be received, or you will just constantly censor yourself, and that will destroy all the fun. Because, and this was something Tom Spanbauer teaches, is that if you do something in order to something else, you destroy all the joy in it. I want to write a book in order to get rich. Not going to work. But if you say, I want to write a book in order to have a great time and it's just a total joy writing a book, then, you can have a good time. But you just can't think about how something is going to be received because, critics might tear it apart. Books may not sell. Grammy might read it. And then you got to face her over Thanksgiving dinner after she's read that sex doll thing, and she thinks you actually lived that. You cannot think about how it's going to be received. That's just not in the picture. So, Pygmy will be received in whatever way, but that's also kind of a strategy is that I never, my dad gave my brother and I one sex talk. He said, don't ever, ever, ever date a redhead. That's it. And he said, don't ever dump the one you're with until you're dating the next one. This is how you end up marrying women you hate on top of trains in the desert. So I never, ever bring a book to market unless I've really completed a draft of something I like even more. So by the time Pygmy comes out and people are just ready to cut my nuts off, I'll be already in love with something else and it won't matter. So.
I was wondering if the way you see the world, is that the result of something that has happened to you, or has that always been the case?
You make it sound like, we see the world differently. I think in a way it's a coping mechanism that I would say my family has, a way of sort of ongoingly finding some way to laugh and make a story out of everything that is just impossible to be with. My grandmother, when she first got breast cancer, she went in for a partial mastectomy, and coming out of the hospital, my grandfather had her suitcase, and they're walking out of Our Lady of Lourdes, and my grandfather goes, "Geez, Ruth, I feel lopsided." And my grandmother goes, "You feel lopsided." And so my family's always taken, whatever awful thing happens and tried to make a funny story out of it. Because, you can either be used by what happens to you, or you can find a way to use it. And may I tell another story?
It's your show.
The heating pad story. Because it illustrates this really well. Because I was telling the gut story so much, and that story is so humiliating and degrading to tell. People feel really safe in telling me their most humiliating stories. And one night, a woman waited till the very, very tail end, and she came up, and she's about my age. I'm 46, and she says, "When I was 7 years old, when I was in second grade, I was a brownie. And when you're in the brownies, you get a brown dress, little hat that looks like an acorn cap, and you try to get merit badges. You try to earn these merit badges. And I got a stomach ache once, and my mom kept me home from school. I was in the second grade, and this was in the 60s, and we had this heating pad that had a vibrating function. And I fell asleep on this heating pad, and it slid down between my legs. And I woke up with the most amazing feeling. Oh my gosh, I never felt anything like that. It was just glorious. So when it was my turn to host the brownies, I said, "Brownies, you got to try this heating pad." And all the brownies came to my house and rode the heating pad, and it was like Sex in the City for 7-year-old girls. And after that, every brownie troop meeting was at my house. And those brownies didn't give a fuck about earning those merit badges anymore. And for the first time ever, I was the most popular girl in my class. And everybody liked me, and everybody wanted to play at Susie's house. Until the day my mom came home from work early. And she caught us with a heating pad. And she sent all the brownies home. She yanked the cord out of the wall, and she beat me with that cord. And she said, "You piece of shit. What kind of piece of filthy trash did I raise?" And this woman says, "I'm 46, and I haven't had an orgasm since the second grade." But she says, if you can tell that gut story and make people laugh, and you can use that story, then I can use my heating pad story. And I can make that into the funniest story people have ever heard. And eventually I can go back and I can go to my mom and I can say, "You remember that heating pad we used to have?" And so that's the whole point, is to use, and that's what my family's always done, is to use tragedy rather than being used by tragedy, and to start that digestion, that resolution process. So I think in a way it's a learned behavior. So, please.
This one's kind of like a what's your favorite color
No good.
What character of yours do you most relate to?
It's always got to be Denny, because I'm always really attracted to the sort of idiot savant who maybe doesn't know everything, but knows what they want to do, and they kind of devote themselves to that, and they don't engage in the ongoing, constant drama around them. They really stay focused on that one thing, and in a way they discover the entire world through that one passion. And so Denny, with his sort of compulsion to collect rocks, I just really find that an endearing character. I love the enlightened idiot characters, Romy and Michelle, the dude, where's my car? You know, those... Right, exactly. Those kind of Mr. Magoo characters who just stay on the path and don't engage with this constant soap opera around them. So, please.
Another favorites question. What was your favorite book to research?
Boy. You know, every book is different. And so it's really hard to say what was a favorite. I loved going to the sex addict support groups for Choke. Those were just better than cable television. They were so fascinating. And there wasn't a night, and I would go twice a week. I'd go Wednesday and Friday nights. There was not a single night when people didn't tell just an extraordinary story. These are the most ordinary, boring people you would ever see. And then they would tell Phil, this is big contractor. He always wore at least 4 plaid shirts, and a big Joseph Stalin mustache, and a wife and 5 kids, and he said, one first meeting I was at, he goes, well, it's the first Thanksgiving in 17 years I haven't spent it with my family. I told my family that I was going to sit with my mother in the ICU unit, and I put on a tight evening dress, and I went down to Hard Times and gave blowjobs all day on Thanksgiving. And I'm looking at Phil, and my only thought is, where did you get an evening dress? You're bigger than Oprah. You're gigantic. How does this happen? And I was constantly amazed that behind these incredibly ordinary facades, people had these fantastically unbelievable secret lives. And I just love that whole process of just hearing people's stories. So, you know, researching Choke was just a blast. So we'll do 2 more questions.
What can you tell us about what situations all singing, all dancing that is Fight Club the musical?
Oh, you know, every time I think that is dead, it comes back. And I hadn't heard anything over the whole winter until I went to Sundance. And then I was talking to a guy from MTV, and he had just interviewed David Fincher, and he said that Fincher was talking it up and was talking about nothing but this project, Fight Club the musical for Broadway. And so I know Fincher's still out there working on it. But my understanding is that I'm supposed to be writing the book, and Trent Reznor is supposed to be doing the music, but that also the whole structure of getting something produced for Broadway is just really different from movies. So that's the big obstacle is you know, getting it into a theater. So, sir.
One of the things that I like about your books is, and I noticed it in Invisible Monsters, one of the first ones I ever read, is you, like when you started doing the haikus, like these little nuggets of wisdom throughout the book. And it was very obvious in Invisible Monster, but you do it a lot throughout the books. It's like these nuggets of wisdom or these little observations that the characters just seem to throw out there. And I always like to see those. What I was wondering is do you come up with those as you're writing the book and you're thinking about what is the character thinking, or sometimes are these thoughts that you've heard or that you've thought of and that maybe you've written down and you're working it into the book at that point? I mean, where does that stuff come from?
The little slogan-y kind of like, what would be the future you have tomorrow won't be the future you have today.
Exactly.
Those slogan-y things.
Yeah, like, you know, the people you love never love you, that sort of stuff.
They'll come from the posters in my school guidance counselor's office. There would always be like that foggy scene of the beach and the slogan, you know, tomorrow is a quest that you'll enjoy today. Don't get a degree in journalism. I always, you know, when I'm writing a story, I want to kind of intercut as many different textures of information. Fictional textures of information, on the body, sort of very sensate, visceral textures of information, ongoing sort of scene descriptive textures of information. In Loser, for example, one texture is about the zeta delts. You know, going to the zeta delts and depicting them, or cutting to on the body. Inside your mouth, there's an old saying, if you don't know what to write next, describe the interior of the character's mouth. Because it's such a visceral place. And so the idea is just to constantly cut from one thing to another, so you never settle on one thing very, very long. And in a way, you're cutting story more like you're cutting a movie. That in a way, you all, not in a way, but you all are the most sophisticated audience that's ever existed in humanity. And you've been exposed to so many stories and so many forms of storytelling that you're really, really smart. And you don't need 19th century writing conventions taking you by the hand and saying, 14 weeks later, Cynthia realized it peed when she urinated. You don't need this constant sort of verbal transitioning between one perspective or one time and another. That you can jump, because movies have made you really, really smart. And writers can just butt one thing up against another thing, and you will decide the association. You know, if there's a painting with a pen and a book, you will make up the story for why there's a pen and a book there. And you will decide that relationship. You will decide what that means. And so all I've got to do is, in a way, provide these objects and do a really good job of depicting the objects in a really particular way, a really specific way. And you will create the associations between them. You'll, in a way, write the story. So one texture of information is those slogans, because they allow you to go to what Tom Spanbauer and minimalists call big voice. There's little voice. Little voice says, the man walked in the room and turned on the light and opened the curtains, and the sun was shining outside. Little voice is this constant sort of narrative description. And big voice comes in and says, and was there really a God in the sky? Who could tell on a day like this? It's kind of a big observant voice, and you don't want to go there very long. God forbid, because it's so vague. But you can go there every once in a while in a very brief way. And it just provides a kind of respite. And one trick in any kind of storytelling is implying the passage of time, so that you don't have to tell a story. You don't have to tell every moment of a story. And so if you cut away to something periodically, you can imply that a greater amount of time has passed without having to say, 4 hours went by before anyone heard the news. You don't have to actually say that time passed. By alternately cutting to a slogan, you can depict state of mind, and you can imply time passing, and you can have a different texture of information. So it's just all, you know, about having a greater smorgasbord of elements to cut to. So you're always cutting to something fresh. Just to sort of wind up the evening, I'm sorry, guys. Do you have real quick ones? Oh. Do you have both have one, or? Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. Ask away. Which story was the hardest to write? Easy. That's so easy. Guts. Guts was a really difficult story to write because no one wanted to hear me talk about it. All my friends would put their hands over their ears and just hum. Nobody wanted to be near that story. Guts. Oh, the finger story. God bless you. Do you have a doll? Okay. The finger story. Okay. And this is another story that I haven't used yet, but it's one of those stories you collect from people. A friend of mine got a degree in French literature, an undergraduate degree. Talk about a useless degree. And so he ended up being a baggage handler for Horizon Airlines in Seattle on the graveyard shift. Just grab the bag off the conveyor belt, throw it on the tug, grab the bag, throw the bag, grab the bag, throw the bag, all night long. And he thought, I'm screwed. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in the basement of SeaTac Airport sending bags to Paris and Rome and London, and I am never going to pay off my student loan, and I'm never going to pay off my car. And then he realizes that there's a posting that says, you always have to wear gloves when you're handling bags. And the posting is because the conveyor belt gets worn. It's this heavy black rubber canvas belt, and it wears so that holes form in it. And there's this chance that at any one point you can grab a bag and your finger will go in one of these holes, and that belt goes very fast. All these bags coming down from ticketing, you could put your finger through that hole and it would just rip your finger off. And he thinks, I'm in the union. I've got a union contract. And he gets his contract out. And he realizes, if he loses this much, he can pay off his student loans. If he loses this much, he can pay off his loans and his car. And if it goes all the way to the knuckle, he can go back to school and get a graduate degree in French literature. Compound that error. So he quits wearing gloves. Grab the bag, throw the bag, grab the bag, throw the bag. And one day he feels this tug, and he pulls his hand back, and that middle finger is just gone. And he's looking at it, and blood is running down his arm, and he's sweating that cold, cold, heavy sweat. And he thinks, cha-fucking-ching. Yeah. All my dreams. And then he turns his hand around and he sees that the finger is actually hanging down the back. And that everything is broken off except for those white stringy things. And he realizes, I'm screwed. If they can reattach this finger, I don't get jack. I get nothing. So I've got to take this finger and pull it off. I've got to pull it off and I've got to throw it in the machinery so it won't be found. And he pulls and he pulls and he pulls. And he says it's like guitar strings. And he can feel it all the way back to his elbow. Just humming. And this whole time he's still bleeding on the bags, but now the bags are cycling back up to ticketing. And he says he gets the finger out about as far as he can stretch it. And the security guards rush in. And they stop him and they take him to the hospital, and now all he has is this scar. And every once in a while, someone will say, "Oh, dude, how'd you get the scar?" And he'll tell that story. But that's how you collect these stories. And now everybody's telling me their finger stories. So thanks for the... please, one last question, and then we'll move on.
Now, I want to know real quick, do you find it difficult to write in a woman's voice like for Invisible Monsters?
Not at all. I try to write completely, as much as I can, without gender indicators and without race indicators. And you can do that by just focusing on verbs, because verbs activate a different portion of your brain than most other language. And several studies have come out in like Lancet medical journals that say that your brain doesn't really know the difference between the verb kick or kiss or hit or run. than it does with the actual action. So your brain lights up when you read the verb run as if you were actually running. And then in that way, the verbs come in under the wire in a way that isn't as screened as most other language. Smells do the same thing. And so smells and verbs are a way of getting a story to people on a much more sort of primal, visceral level. And you don't have to deal with gender or race or anything that might exclude the reader. The reader can sort of impose their own experience because the description is not there. And so it just makes a more effective story that reaches a more vulnerable reader. And I don't have to worry about giving a character her period. It's like, I just try to make the only gender indicators usually the name of the person. And I even give their genitals sort of a slangy nicknames. So it's not even specifically one thing or the other. So, ready, set, blow. One last doll thing. One boy, one girl. And again, the book is Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock. Sure.
I just want to answer you. I just read Snuff in 2 days, true fact, and I wanted to know, how do you go about writing a great twist ending?
Oh, you end up writing the twist ending like 10 times. It had 10 different endings until it came up with that ending. Now, was that blown up before? No, we almost have a boy over here. But really, the secret is rewriting. For me, it's just rewriting and rewriting and rewriting until I come up with something that surprises me that I hadn't anticipated. Oh, okay, we got a boy. Do we have a girl yet?
Thank you.
Do you have a girl? Almost. 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 He's so red. Almost. That's wrinkly. That's good. That's good. Okay, there you go. Now, one last Station of the Cross. In Snuff, again, going back to objects, there are the blow-up dolls, there are the cyanide pills, there is the bouquet of wilting flowers. What is the fourth object? You said puppy. Okay, you get the book. So the fourth object is something called an autograph hound. That they were really popular in the 1940s and into the 50s. These little canvas dogs. And you would get all your friends to sign them like a yearbook. So this is an autograph hound. And to prove what a loser I am, I spent a big chunk of my winter watching marathons of To Catch a Predator. The only show I asked my publicist to get me on. And autographing hounds. Charles, would you help me here?
Yes, sir. I didn't know it.
Whoa.
These are set puppies.
Standing room only people in the lot.
Oh. All right. Thank you very much for coming out tonight. Thank you.